The clink of silver on porcelain was the only sound I was supposed to notice. At Giovanni's, the air itself was expensive. It smelled like old money, aged wine, and the kind of garlic that cost more per bulb than I made in an hour. It was another suffocating Tuesday night in Manhattan, and I was just trying to keep my feet from screaming. My name is Tessa, and I was the ghost in the black apron, the one paid to be invisible while refilling water glasses for men who bought and sold the world between their appetizer and their steak. I had been doing this for 3 years, 3 years of smiling until my face hurt, of dodging hands, and of smelling a life I could never touch. Tonight, the air was different. It was heavy, tight, like a storm pressing down on the city. The tension was coiled in one corner of the dining room. The corner booth? It was not just a table of regulars. It was a blockade. 4 men, built like refrigerators in custom suits, sat with their backs to the room, forming a human wall, and at the head of the table, facing out, sat the 5th man. I had passed them twice already, keeping my eyes down, just catching glimpses. The 4 men were agitated, shifting, watching the door, watching the other patrons, but the 5th man was perfectly still. He was not young, maybe somewhere in his 50s, with dark hair salted with silver at the temples, combed back perfectly. He wore a suit so black it seemed to drink the low light in the restaurant. He was not eating. He was not drinking. He was just watching. And the silence around him was louder than the rest of the restaurant combined. I did not know who he was. In my world, you learned fast that you did not ask. You just served, and you forgot. I was clearing plates from the table next to theirs, my arms loaded with china, when his voice cut through the room. "Waitress!" It was not loud, did not have to be. The word landed like a stone, and the quiet ripples of conversation in the room just stopped. I froze, the weight of the plates suddenly crushing. I could feel the eyes of the 4 large men snap onto me. Slowly, I turned. He gestured, just a faint lift of his chin. My feet felt like lead as I moved, setting the heavy tray down on my service stand before approaching him. "Sir." I kept my eyes respectful, aimed at his chin. "Stop." I flinched. "Look at me." I raised my head. His eyes were the first thing I truly saw. They were not brown, not black, but something in between. Flat and deep and old, they held no warmth, just an intense, burning focus that pinned me in place. I felt naked, like he could see every cheap thread in my uniform, every unpaid bill in my wallet, every desperate, foolish dream I kept locked away. I suddenly knew, without knowing how, that this was not a Wall Street banker. This was something else. "I require a specific drink," he said, his voice a low, smooth gravel. "A Sazerac, a proper one, to tell the bartender to use Peychaud's bitters and to rinse the glass with absinthe, not just wave the bottle over it. If he does not know how, tell him not to bother." "Yes, sir," I managed, my throat dry. "And bring it yourself." I nodded, turned, and walked away. My back rigid. I could feel his gaze on me, a physical weight, all the way to the bar. I relayed the order. Marco, the bartender, raised an eyebrow but nodded. He knew the drink. He also knew not to ask questions. When I returned, the glass was cold in my hand, smelling of anise and rye. I walked back to the table. The 4 men watched my hands, probably looking for a tremor. I focused on the small circle of the coaster, placing the drink down without a sound. I was about to make my escape, to melt back into the shadows. "You look smart." I stopped again. This time, I did not turn right away. It was not a compliment, it was an assessment, like a man judging livestock. I turned back. "Is there anything else I can get for you, sir?" He leaned forward, just an inch. The movement was so small, but it pulled the gravity of the room with him. His men leaned in too. "I have a problem," he said, ignoring my question. He watched me, searching my face. A financial problem, a significant one. A bubble of insane laughter threatened to rise in my throat. I was calculating if my tips tonight would cover the subway ride home and a box of pasta. "I'm not sure how I could help with that, sir," I said, my voice carefully neutral. One of the men at the table, a brute with a broken nose, let out a low, guttural snicker. "Boss, she's a waitress." The man at the head of the table did not look at his man. His eyes never left mine. "She is," he agreed softly, "but she is also still standing here. She did not run." He tilted his head. "So, I will ask you, do you know a way to help me solve my current financial problem?" The snicker from the other man died instantly. The entire restaurant seemed to be holding its breath. This was not a joke. This was a test. A bizarre, terrifying test. My mind raced. Flashing to the dog-eared finance textbooks I checked out from the public library, the ones I read under a dim bulb in my tiny apartment, dreaming of a life where numbers meant power, not just debt. I took a breath, letting it out slowly. "That would depend on the nature of the problem, sir." The silence stretched. The man with the broken nose looked surprised. "Is it a liquidity problem or an asset allocation problem?" I continued, the words feeling strange and foreign on my tongue. The boss's expression did not change, but a new light flickered in those dark eyes. "It is a problem of movement, a very large asset that must become fluid without attracting the wrong kind of attention." The snickers were gone. All four men were staring at me now. I felt a strange calm settle over me, the fear momentarily eclipsed by the thrill of the problem. "You do not move an elephant by pushing it," I said quietly. "Everyone will see it move. You break it down, you move it in pieces, through channels that look boring. Old businesses, real estate holdings, art auctions. You create smaller, seemingly unrelated entities to hold the assets, each one below the reporting threshold. You use shell companies based in different jurisdictions, so the paper trail becomes a maze. You make the elephant invisible by painting it the color of the room, piece by piece." I finished. My heart was hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it. I had just described, in simple terms, a way to launder money, to a man who looked like he invented the practice. For a long moment, he just studied me. His face was granite, impossible to read. I had either just passed the test or signed my own death warrant. The man with the broken nose looked like I had just grown a second head. Then the boss nodded. It was a slow, fractional movement, a movement of finality. "Go," he said. My knees felt weak. I turned and walked away. I did not run. I walked. Each step measured, even as the adrenaline screamed at me to bolt. I did not look back. I could feel his eyes on my back, burning a hole through my cheap black shirt. I made it to the service station, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the edge of the stainless steel counter. I pretended to polish silverware that was already clean, just trying to breathe. What had I done? What in God's name had I just done? My shift was supposed to end in 20 minutes, and I could run home, lock my door, and pretend this night never happened. A shadow fell over me. I looked up. It was one of the large men, the one who had not snickered. He had a pale scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. "He wants you," the man said. His voice was flat. My blood ran cold. I am working. "The boss. He wants to see you. Now." He did not grab me. He did not threaten. He just stood there, an immovable object. I put the polishing cloth down. My feet moved on their own, following him back through the dining room. The other patrons were studiously ignoring us now. They sensed the danger, the way animals sense an earthquake. When we reached the booth, the other three men were gone. They stood near the walls, watching, alert. He was alone at the table, sitting exactly as he had been. The Sazerac was untouched. I stood before him, feeling small, like a mouse summoned by the hawk. He looked at the drink, then up at me. That same intense, unreadable gaze. He did not smile. "I think," he said, his voice a quiet rumble that I felt in my chest, "you can help me more than that." It was not a question. It was not an invitation, it was a declaration. It was a door swinging open into a darkness I had only ever read about, a world of violence and power and impossible wealth. And I knew, standing there in my worn-out shoes, with the smell of rye whiskey and danger in the air, I was about to walk right through it. His words hung in the air, heavy as velvet. "I think," he had said, "you can help me more than that." It was not a job offer. It was a summons. My heart, which had been hammering against my ribs, went very still. Help him. A man like him, I knew the name now. It had clicked into place the moment he asked me about moving assets. A cold, sharp shock of recognition. Vincent Caruso, the name the newspapers only whispered, the one associated with shadows and silence. The man who owned corners of the city you were not supposed to look at too closely. And he was looking at me. Tessa, a girl from the Bronx, like I was some kind of answer. I was 26 years old. I had lived those 26 years climbing out of a hole, a place where the sirens were the city's only lullaby, and dreams were just something you had before the alarm clock shattered the dark. Poverty is not just about being broke. It is a smell. It is the mildew in the drywall of your first apartment. It is the metallic taste of tap water and the ache in your bones from a mattress you found on the street. It is a stain you cannot wash off, no matter how hard you scrub. I had been scrubbing for 3 years at Giovanni's, smiling at men who spent more on a bottle of wine than I made in a month. 3 long, exhausting years of feeling like I did not belong, of breathing in a life that was not mine, of being the invisible hands that cleared away their scraps. It was a good job, people said. It paid the bills, barely, but it was a cage, a beautiful, velvet-lined cage where I was suffocating slowly, but I refused to surrender. I would not let that stain set. I would not go down. My secret, the one I kept locked up tight behind my tired eyes, was finance. It sounds ridiculous, a waitress obsessed with corporate ledgers and market trends, but to me, the stock market, the bonds, the complex derivatives I could barely pronounce. It was not just money. It was a language. It was the language of power. It was the armor the men in this restaurant wore, the thing that made them untouchable. If I could learn that language, I could not be touched either. If I knew how the money moved, I could finally move with it, instead of being swept away by its current. But the doors to that world were heavy, solid oak, and locked tight. The tuition for a business degree was a laughable fantasy, a number so large it felt like a cruel joke aimed right at me. So I went to the one place that was free, the public library. I read, I studied, I consumed textbooks on macroeconomics and asset allocation while I ate cold noodles in my tiny, drafty studio apartment. I taught myself the language of the men I served, practicing their words in my head, hoping one day I could speak it out loud. I was still grieving. My mother. She had passed 2 years ago. The cancer had eaten her away slowly, leaving nothing but hospital bills and the hollow echo of her voice in my head. "Be honest, Tessa," she would say, her hands rough and red from cleaning other people's houses. "You work hard, you stay true, and you never give up. That is all that matters." She believed in the system. She believed that honesty was its own reward. I loved her for it. I missed her with an ache that still stole my breath, but I also watched that system, the one she believed in, chew her up and spit her out. Her honesty got her a shared room in a public hospital and a pile of debt that they tried to pin on me. Never give up. That part I kept. That part was tattooed on my soul, the honesty part. That was feeling more and more like a luxury I could not afford. And now, standing in this temple of wealth, I was looking at Vincent Caruso. He was the exact opposite of everything my mother had preached. He was not honest. He did not follow the rules. He made the rules. He was the criminal world I had only seen in movies, a place of shadows and whispered violence. It was terrifying. The danger radiated from him like heat, a silent, deadly promise. But the pull, God, the pull was undeniable. It was a siren song that drowned out my mother's warnings. He was not offering me a paycheck. He was offering me a seat at the table. He was offering me the keys to the world I had been pressing my nose against, desperate to get in. He had seen something in me, not just a waitress. He had seen the hunger. He had seen the girl who read finance books in the dark. I met his eyes, the dark, flat, assessing eyes. I made my choice. My mother's voice whispered, "Be honest." But the sound of my empty cupboards and the memory of her medical bills screamed louder. What would I have to do, I asked. My voice was low, but it did not shake. A flicker of something moved in his expression. It was not a smile. It was confirmation. He knew he had been right. "You would have to learn," he said, his voice a quiet rumble that I felt in my chest. "You would have to forget everything you think you know, and you would have to be loyal. And if I am, then you will never serve another drink in this restaurant again." That was it. That was the moment my life split in two, the before and the after. I did not go back to the service station. I did not clock out. The man with the scar, whose name I would learn was Leo, simply handed a thick wad of cash to my manager, who paled and nodded, not meeting my eyes. I walked out of Giovanni's, my apron still on, and into the back of a black sedan that was warmer and quieter than my entire apartment. The next weeks were a blur. The textbooks I had read were kindergarten primers. Vincent, he told me to call him Vincent, introduced me to his world. It was not just guns and threats, though I knew they were there, humming beneath the surface. It was spreadsheets, offshore accounts, wire transfers, and lawyers. So many lawyers in $1,000 suits. I met men who spoke in whispers about moving fortunes, about cleaning assets and diversifying interests. I learned that managing money in his world meant making the impossible look legal, making mountains of cash disappear in one place and reappear, pristine, in another. And the frightening part, I was good at it. My mind, which had felt so sluggish and tired while balancing trays of champagne, came alive. I saw patterns. I saw the loopholes the textbooks only hinted at. I absorbed it all, the speed, the risk, the sheer scale of it. I was not just a waitress anymore. I was becoming something else, something I had dreamed of, and something my mother would have feared. This education, this rapid, terrifying ascent from servitude, was leading somewhere specific. Vincent did not do things without a purpose. He was molding me. He was preparing me. And I knew it was all converging on one massive event. A deal he had mentioned in passing, a deal that was giving his men headaches, a deal worth. As he told me one night in his stark, modern office overlooking the city, upwards of $200 million. From serving a Sazerac to helping move a fortune. This was the start of my relationship with Vincent Caruso, a relationship built not on romance, not on kindness, but on something far more dangerous necessity, and I was all in. The call came late, well past midnight, severing the fragile peace of my small apartment. It was not a text, but a voice. Leo's, "He will see you. Now." The line went dead. There was no address, only a black car waiting at the curb, its engine a low, patient thrum in the sleeping street. My transformation had begun weeks ago, but this felt different. This was not education. This was a summons. The car did not take me to the quiet, oak-paneled office I had been to before. It cut through the heart of Manhattan, pulling up to a skyscraper of glass and steel that seemed to scrape the stars. The lobby was empty, sterile. Leo guided me not to the main elevators, but to a private service lift operated by a key. We ascended in silence, the mechanics humming smoothly. The doors opened onto the penthouse. It was not an office. It was a fortress. The entire floor was one vast open space, walled by floor-to-ceiling windows that displayed New York as a glittering, silent circuit board below. The air smelled new, of leather and expensive, clean metal. There was almost no furniture, just a long, black conference table that looked like a sheet of ice, and in the corner a single, massive desk made of the same dark wood. Vincent Caruso stood in front of the window, his back to me. He was not wearing a suit, but a simple black cashmere sweater and dark trousers. He looked like part of the shadow, a silhouette against the city he owned. "Close the door, Leo," he said, without turning. Leo stepped out and the heavy door clicked shut, the sound unnervingly final. I was alone with him, 50 stories above the world, in a room that felt as cold and vast as the night sky. "You have done well," he said, his voice quiet, absorbing the silence. "The lawyers are impressed. They say you have a mind for structure." "Thank you, sir," I managed, my hands clasped tightly behind my back. "Do not call me sir." He turned then. His eyes were the same, dark, flat, and seeing everything. "You are not a waitress anymore. Tessa, you are here because I am about to place a $200 million problem in your hands." He gestured to the glass table. "Sit." I sat. He remained standing, a predator preferring to loom. "The deal I mentioned, it is not just about moving money," he said. "That is simple. That is plumbing. This is architecture." He explained it was not a simple transfer. It was a hostile acquisition. A legitimate technology corporation was vulnerable, and he intended to buy it. All of it. The $200 million was the capital, but it was dirty. It was the combined revenue of a dozen illicit enterprises. My job was not just to clean it. My job was to create the entity, the legitimate, phantom corporation that would make the purchase. I was to be the architect of the lie, the one who built a paper fortress so flawless, so intricate, that no one would ever question the source of the funds. I felt a cold lurch in my stomach. This was not the abstract theory from my library books. This was not a game. He was asking me to commit fraud on a scale that shattered the imagination. He was asking me to put my name, my mind, my entire future on the line. Vincent, I started, my voice catching. "This is beyond anything I have ever studied. This is not just finding loopholes. This is creating a ghost." "That is exactly what it is," he said. He moved to the table and sat opposite me, the vast expanse of black glass separating us. "I need a ghost, and you are going to build it." The moral dilemma I had been wrestling with suddenly solidified, taking shape right in front of me. My mother's voice, "Be honest." "Tessa," was a faint, desperate whisper against the roaring, beautiful power of the numbers in my head. This was the dark side. I had been towing the line, telling myself I was just an analyst, an advisor, but this step was different. This was the one I could not take back. This was the act that would make me one of them. "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "You have teams of lawyers, accountants, men you have known for years." "They think like accountants," he said, a flicker of distaste in his voice. "They are predictable. They leave tracks. The man I am buying this from, he is watching for me. He expects me." He leaned forward. "He does not expect you. You do not think like them. You think like I do. You see the elephant, and—" Before I could answer, the door opened and Leo entered, followed by the brute from the restaurant, the one with the broken nose, Rocco. Rocco's eyes, small and hostile, landed on me immediately. He looked at me like I was something he had found on the bottom of his shoe. "Boss," Rocco said, his voice a low growl. He ignored me completely. "The preparations are moving, but we have a problem. The team is uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable," Vincent repeated. It was not a question. "With her," Rocco finally jabbed a thick finger in my direction. "She is a kid, a waitress. You are bringing her into this, into the $200 million deal. It is insulting. It is dangerous. How do we know she is not a plant? How do we know she will not break?" My entire body went rigid. The air crackled with hostility. Vincent did not raise his voice. He did not move. He just looked at Rocco until the larger man shifted, his bravado wilting. "She is here because I put her here. She is here because her mind works in ways yours cannot. You will show her respect. You will give her whatever she needs. Is that understood?" Rocco's face turned a dull, angry red. He nodded, a sharp, jerky motion, but his eyes promised me that this was not over. "That is not the only problem," Leo said, his voice calm as ever. He stepped forward and placed a small, silver data stick on the table. "This was delivered to the front desk, addressed to you, personally." Vincent slid the stick into a port on the table. A section of the glass surface lit up, turning into a high-definition screen. He played the file. My blood turned to ice. It was me. Grainy, shaky footage, clearly filmed from across the street. It showed me leaving my apartment building that morning. It showed me walking to the corner bodega. It showed me getting into the black car tonight. Someone was watching me. Someone knew who I was, where I lived, and who I was meeting. Rocco swore, a low, vicious sound. "She is compromised. She is a liability." I could not breathe. My cheap apartment, my last shred of a normal life, had been breached. They knew where I was. "She is not compromised," Vincent said, his eyes on the screen. "She is a message." He looked at me, and his gaze was terrifyingly calm. "Someone is telling me they see my new piece on the board. They are trying to rattle me, to make me doubt." He turned the screen off. The image of my front door vanished, but I could still see it, burned into my mind. "So, Tessa," he said, as if the last 5 minutes had not happened, "you must make a decision. This is not the library. This is not a game. What you are about to do is real. The risks are real. Rocco is right about one thing. Once you are in, there is no getting out." I looked at the blank screen where the video of my life had just played. I looked at Rocco's undisguised hatred. I looked at Leo's watchful, neutral face, and then I looked at Vincent. He was offering me a choice, but we both knew it was an illusion. Running was impossible. They would find me. My old life was gone. The video proved that. My only path was forward, deeper into the darkness. "When do we start?" I said. A hint of a smile, cold as the glass between us, touched Vincent's lips. "We start now." The next few days were a sleepless, caffeine-fueled haze. The penthouse became my world. I did not leave. I slept on a sofa in a side room for a few hours at a time, but mostly I worked. I built the Ghost. I created a holding company in Delaware, then layered it with 2 more in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. I fabricated transaction histories, shareholder reports, a digital footprint so perfect, so boring, it was unimpeachable. I was using the language of finance as a weapon, as a shield. Rocco and his men watched me, their suspicion a constant, heavy pressure on my back. But as I worked, as I built the structure and explained the complex pathways, I saw Rocco's expression shift from simple contempt to a grudging, confused respect. I was not just a waitress. I was a goddamn magician. Finally, the night came. The final transfer. The office was silent, charged with a tension so thick I could barely swallow. The lawyers were on a secure video link on the wall screen. Leo and Rocco stood by the door. I was at my terminal. Vincent was at the head of the table, a single phone in front of him. This was the moment. The $200 million was poised, ready to move from a dozen dark corners of the world into my ghost corporation, which would then, in one clean, legal motion, acquire the target tech company. "All parties are confirmed," the lawyer on the screen said, his face pale. "We are ready for authorization." My part was done. The architecture was built. All Vincent had to do was give the verbal command. He picked up the phone. He looked at me, a silent acknowledgement. I had done it. He opened his mouth to speak the authorization code, and I saw it. It was nothing. A trick of the light, a flash of reflection. I had been staring at the wall above that video screen for 3 days. There was a smoke detector, a standard, commercial-grade smoke detector. But as Vincent moved, the light from my monitor caught something on it, a pinprick of black glass. It was not angled at the room. It was angled directly at Vincent, at the table, at my screen. It was not the shaky, external surveillance from the video. That was a warning. This was a violation. This was inside. "Stop," I whispered. No one heard me. "Vincent, stop," I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the silence. Everyone froze. Vincent's hand tightened on the phone, his eyes snapping to me, cold with sudden fury. The lawyers on the screen looked startled. "Tessa, what are you doing?" he hissed. "Do not say anything else," I commanded, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I stood up, my hand shaking, and pointed, not at the detector, but at the blank notepad in front of him. I walked over, took the pen, and wrote 5 words. My script messy from the adrenaline. "There is a camera in your office." His eyes scanned the words. His expression did not change, but the stillness that entered the room was no longer calm. It was the lethal, absolute zero stillness of a predator that has just spotted the trap. He looked up, his gaze following my own, to the innocuous white disc on the wall. He was about to close a $200 million deal, and someone was listening. Silence. Absolute. Frozen silence. The lawyers on the video screen were still visible, their mouths open, confused by the sudden void. Leo and Rocco stood rigid by the door, their hands instinctively moving inside their jackets. They were looking at me, their eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and pure, unadulterated rage. I had just stopped a $200 million transaction with a single word. Vincent's eyes, however, never left mine. He did not look at the smoke detector. He looked at the notepad. He looked at my face. He processed the information in a fraction of a second. His entire demeanor, which had been relaxed, locked down, it became the lethal, granite calm I had seen in the restaurant. He was a king who had just been told a peasant had breached the castle walls. He turned to the screen. He did not move his head. His voice was smooth, betraying nothing. "Gentlemen, a slight delay, a verification query has just been raised on my end." One of the lawyers, a pale man in Boston, leaned into his camera. "Mr. Caruso, this is highly time-sensitive. The authorization window is—" "I am aware." Vincent cut him off, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of iron. "You will hold, and you will mute this line. We will re-initiate." He pressed a button on the console. The screen went black. The lawyers vanished. We were alone. 50 stories up, in a room that had just become a tomb. Rocco took a step forward, his face purple. "Boss, what is this? What did this girl do?" Vincent ignored him. He looked at me, and then, slowly, raised his eyes to the innocuous white disc on the ceiling. He nodded. Just once. "Rocco," Vincent said, his voice terrifyingly soft. "Go to the breaker room on floor 48. Cut the power to this wing. Not the entire floor, just this office. The lights, the terminals, everything. Do it now." "But the deal," Rocco sputtered. "The system." "Now—" Rocco, seeing something in Vincent's face, turned and left, slamming the door. Vincent turned his gaze to Leo. The door. No one enters. Leo nodded, his back to us, a statue of black Italian wool. Vincent and I were alone in the center of the vast, dark room. The city lights our only illumination. He walked around the table until he was standing next to me, but he was not looking at me. He was looking at the camera. "How did you know?" he asked. "A reflection," I said, my voice a dry whisper. "When you moved, the light from my monitor caught the lens. It was aimed directly at your notepad." He nodded again. "The video of your apartment, it was a distraction, to make us look outside." The lights clicked off. The terminals died. The room plunged into darkness. The only sounds were the faint hum of the building and the distant, thin scream of a siren 50 stories below. The city glowed, a silent, glittering witness. "Leo," Vincent said into the dark. "Get it." I heard a heavy scrape as Leo, a man I had only ever seen move with lethal grace, climbed onto the priceless glass conference table. There was a sound of rending plastic, a snap of wires, and he was back on the floor. "Rocco, power," Vincent spoke, not into a phone, but into the air, knowing he was being listened to on some other channel. The lights flickered, buzzed, and came back on. The terminals began to boot, their fans whirring to life. In Vincent's hand was the smoke detector. He placed it on the table between us. He used a small penknife to pry the casing open. Inside, nestled next to the particle sensor, was a tiny, sophisticated camera and microphone, its wires severed. Rocco burst back in. "What is it? What is going on?" Vincent just pointed at the device on the table. They were not just watching. They were listening. They were waiting for me to speak the authorization codes, waiting for us to confirm the new architecture. He looked at me, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "You did not just save the deal, Tessa. You saved me." The deal was dead. The structure I had built, the Ghost Corporation, was compromised. It was burned. "We do not just build a new one." Vincent told me, hours later, after the room had been electronically swept and cleared. Leo and Rocco were gone, sent on some dark errand to find the source. "We build a maze, and this time, you will not just build the house. You will help me decide what goes inside it." This was when my education truly began. The penthouse was abandoned. We moved to a different location, a secure office in a nondescript building in Queens that smelled of old coffee and concrete. For the first time, I was shown the real books. This was not spreadsheets. This was not Wall Street theory. This was the raw, ugly truth. Ledgers bound in cheap vinyl, detailing the flow of cash from 100 different sources. Protection rackets in South Brooklyn, illegal casinos in the back rooms of social clubs, loan sharking operations that charged 300% interest. My internal conflict, the ghost of my mother's voice, screamed I was handling money that had been taken from terrified small business owners. I was balancing books that were stained with the thread of broken legs and shattered lives. I was not just moving assets. I was laundering the proceeds of human misery. "This," I said one night, my hand shaking as I pointed to a ledger. "The South Brooklyn numbers. This is from the protection collections." Vincent did not even look up from his own work. "Money is money, Tessa. It does not have a memory. It is a tool. Nothing more." "These people," I pushed, feeling sick. "They are being hurt." He finally looked up, his eyes flat and cold. "Everyone hurts. The men I am buying this company from, they hurt people in boardrooms. They fire 10,000 employees to make a stock price go up 2 points. They poison water systems because it is cheaper than cleaning up. I hurt people in alleys. Do not sit there and pretend there is a moral difference. There is only power. And who has it? Now, find a way to make that ledger clean by morning." I flinched, but I did not argue, because the most terrifying part was that, in his world, he was right. And worse, a part of me, the part that had been hungry for so long, was starting to agree with him. The sheer scale of it was hypnotic. I was becoming numb. My rise was meteoric, and it did not go unnoticed. Rocco, in particular, watched me with a simmering hatred. I was not just a waitress anymore. I was the boss's new pet, the one who had seen the trap a man who had been at Vincent's side for 20 years, had missed. My presence was an insult to him. Vincent, however, only trusted me more. He gave me a burner phone, a car, a new apartment, this one in a secure, anonymous high-rise where Leo himself had vetted the doorman. I was, for all intents and purposes, a maid woman, just without the blood. But the past has a way of clinging to you. Vincent gave me one day off, a single afternoon to breathe. I made the mistake of going back. I took a car to the Bronx, to my old neighborhood. I just wanted to walk streets that did not feel sterile, to smell real food cooking, to feel normal. Tessa Ryan. I turned. My heart dropped. It was Mike, my ex-boyfriend, the one I had left behind 3 years ago, before Giovanni's, before any of this. He looked the same, tired, grease under his fingernails from the garage, but with the same easy smile. "Mike," I said, forcing a smile, It is good to see you." My God, Tess, he said, his eyes scanning me. I was wearing a silk blouse and a tailored wool coat. I realized, expensive. Look at you. We all heard you just vanished. Left the restaurant in the middle of a shift. People were worried. I got a new opportunity, I said, my voice tight. In finance. His smile faded. Finance? Right. He took a step closer. Come on, Tess. I saw you a week ago getting into a black sedan, a car like that, on this street. That is not finance. That is something else. You should go, Mike, I said, a cold dread creeping up my spine. Leo was in the car, half a block down, watching. I am in trouble, Tess, he said, his voice dropping. Some real trouble. I owe some guys, bad ones, $10,000. They are going to break my legs. Mike, I cannot help you. What? Yes, you can, he insisted, his face hardening. Whatever you are in, they have money. I see that coat. I just need a little help. You know, for old time's sake. Or maybe I should just tell those guys I owe what I saw. Maybe they would be interested in your new finance job. Maybe the cops would. It was not a request. It was blackmail. The old, kind Mike was gone, replaced by a desperate, cornered rat. My hand went into my pocket. My voice, when it came out, was not my own. It was cold. It was Vincent's. Are you threatening me? Mike. He flinched. He had never heard this tone from me. I pulled out the wad of emergency cash Vincent had given me. I did not count it. I shoved it into his chest. Take it, and you never saw me. You never spoke to me. If you come near me again, Mike, the people I work for, they are not as nostalgic as I am. Go. I walked away, my legs shaking, and got into the car. I was furious, and I was heartbroken. The last piece of my old life had just tried to sell me out. A problem, Leo asked, his eyes on the rearview mirror as Mike scrambled to pick up the cash. A ghost, I said, my voice flat. It is handled. When I told Vincent, he merely nodded. Everyone has ghosts. If he appears again, Leo will handle it. The finality of his words made me shiver. My work on the new $200 million deal was better. It was smarter. I was not just hiding the money, I was weaponizing it. I created a new plan. We would not buy the target company in one motion. We would buy it in 3 pieces, using 3 separate, competing ghost entities, creating a fake bidding war to drive the price down before consolidating. Vincent was impressed. He began pulling me into his real strategy meetings. One night, I was at the table, Rocco was there, Leo, 2 other capos I did not know. They were discussing a rival, the Falcone family. Rocco was arguing for a violent move, an ambush. Vincent, sitting at the head of the table, turned to me. Tessa, what does the data say? The room went dead silent. Rocco looked like he was going to spontaneously combust. I cleared my throat. The data says Rocco is wrong. The Falcones are expecting a violent move. They are prepared for it. But they are financially overextended. Their entire shipping enterprise is leveraged against a bad loan, a targeted, aggressive buyout of their logistics partner. It would cripple them in a week. No shots fired, no bodies, just bankruptcy. There was a long silence. Vincent stared at me, his face unreadable. Then he looked at Rocco. Do what she said. The trust was absolute, and the danger was to... Rocco's hatred was no longer simmering. It was a clear, cold fire. He knew I was not just an accountant. I was a rival. We were days away from finalizing the new deal. The maze was built. The money was ready to move. Leo came to me late, when I was alone in the Queen's office, running the final projections. The camera, he said, his voice a low rumble. The one you found. Yes. We analyzed it, military grade, very expensive. But it was not transmitting wirelessly. It was wired, hardwired into the building's network. I frowned, turning from my screen. So the signal was not being broadcast. No, Leo said, his face grim. It was being fed to a server on floor 49, in the legal department's private archive. That does not make sense, I said, my mind racing. Why not just send it out? Why risk keeping it in the building? Because the person watching did not need to, Leo said, his eyes locking on mine. They were already in the building. A cold dread settled over me. The video of my apartment was a distraction, a misdirection, to make us look for an external threat. Only 4 people have access to that archive room. Tessa, Leo said, his voice flat. The head of the legal team. He's in Boston, Vincent, me. He paused. And who is the 4th? Leo. Leo's jaw tightened. Rocco. The pieces slammed into place. Rocco's anger at me stopping the deal. His fury at my rise. He had not been angry that the deal was compromised. He had been angry that it was stopped. He wanted Vincent to authorize it on a recorded line, detailing the entire structure, handing it all over. He is the traitor, I whispered. He is the traitor, Leo confirmed, and he knows we are moving again. He's getting desperate. Rocco. The name hung in the air, heavy and foul. Leo, the man I had come to see as my only anchor in this storm, had just handed me the traitor, and my heart, which had been pounding with fear, now thudded with a cold, hard certainty. It was not just the camera. It was not just the video of my apartment. Leo was right. That had been a misdirection, a clumsy piece of theater to make us look outside. The real threat was inside. It had been all along. Rocco, with his simmering hatred, his open contempt. He had access. He had the motive. He was furious that a waitress, had taken his place. But something felt wrong. A piece of the puzzle was jagged. It did not fit. Rocco was a brute. He was muscle. He was loud and he was angry. The betrayal, however, was quiet. It was technical. It was smart. It was a wiretap, a server, a hidden camera. It was not a car bomb or a bullet. It was a scalpel. Rocco was a hammer. He is desperate. Leo had said, that part I believed. We were moving. The new deal, my maze, was scheduled to go live in less than 12 hours. The $200 million was ready. If Rocco was the traitor, he was out of time. He had to act. We have to tell Vincent, I said, my voice low. He is waiting, Leo replied, his face grim. We did not drive. We went up to the roof, where a private helicopter waited, its blades already turning in the cold night air. The city was a smear of light below us as we cut across the river. We landed on the roof of the penthouse, the place I had almost been destroyed. Vincent was standing where I had last seen him, in front of the window, a silhouette against the city. But this time, the room was not empty. Rocco was there. He was standing by the glass table, his arms crossed, looking annoyed. It is 3 a.m, boss, Rocco said as we entered. The deal is in 10 hours. Why are we here? And why is she here? Vincent did not look at Rocco. He looked at me and then at Leo. Tell him. We found the wiretap, Rocco, Leo said, his voice flat. The one in the smoke detector. Rocco's face went from annoyed to confused. What good? So you got the bastard. It was wired, Leo continued, his voice cold, to the server in the legal archive on floor 49. The blood drained from Rocco's face. He understood. He looked at Vincent, his expression one of dawning, absolute horror. Boss, wait. You do not think? Only 4 people have access. Rocco, Vincent said, his voice a quiet, deadly rumble. The lawyers are in Boston. I am here. Leo is here. He took a step toward the larger man. And then there is you. No! Rocco exploded, his voice a roar of disbelief. Never, I would never. 20 years. Boss, I've taken bullets for you. This is her. He jabbed a thick, shaking finger at me. She set me up. This little snake. She comes in here. She whispers in your ear. She gets you to change everything. She stopped the last deal. Now she is trying to burn me. I was the one who found the camera. Rocco, I said, my voice shaking, but hard. Why would I stop the deal if I was the one trying to sabotage it? Yes, to get closer to him, Rocco yelled, to make him trust you. And now you have him. You are getting rid of the rest of us, one by one. Stop, Vincent commanded. The word cut through Rocco's rage. I do not want to believe it, Rocco. But the facts are the facts. The server does not lie. What's facts? What facts? Rocco was desperate, his eyes wild. He was looking at Vincent, pleading. I am not a technical guy. Boss, you know this. I do not know anything about servers or cameras. I break heads. That is what I do. Ask Leo. He handles the security. He handles the tech. He is the one who... Rocco stopped. His eyes, which had been darting between me and Vincent, settled, for the first time, on Leo. The silence that filled the room was heavier than any shout. Leo stood by the door, his face a perfect, calm mask. He had not moved. He had not spoken. He was just watching. Rocco stared at him. Leo, you were the one. You were the one who told me to go to the breaker room. You were the one who swept the room. You were the one who checked the server. I did, Leo said, his voice even, and it led me to you. Rocco took a step back, a strangled, guttural sound coming from his throat. It was not anger. It was realization. You. It was you. It was always you. My heart stopped. I looked at Leo, the trusted one, the calm center, the man who had protected me, the man who had told me just an hour ago that Rocco was the traitor. Leo. Vincent's voice was a whisper. The betrayal was so profound, so unthinkable. It broke his granite calm. Leo's mask did not drop. It just settled. The calm was no longer reassuring. It was reptilian. He was always a problem, boss, Leo said, his voice smooth as polished steel. Too loud, too angry, too stupid. He was the perfect scapegoat. Rocco let out a wordless roar and lunged. He was a bull, all muscle and fury, but Leo was a snake. He did not meet the charge. He sidestepped, and his hand moved, not for a gun, but for a knife I had not even seen. He brought it up, fast, aiming for Rocco's throat. But Rocco, in his rage, was fast. He twisted, and the blade, instead of ending him, buried itself deep in his shoulder. He howled, slamming Leo against the wall. Vincent moved then, pulling a heavy, black pistol from a hidden compartment under the table. Enough! Both men froze, Leo with his knife still embedded in Rocco's shoulder, Rocco breathing like a winded bull, blood pouring down his chest. Leo, why? Vincent's voice was hollow. Why? Leo laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. He looked at Vincent with a hatred so cold it burned. 25 years I've been your shadow. I was the one who planned your moves. I was the one who built your security. I was the one who cleaned your messes. And what did I have to show for it? I was your dog, your polite, quiet, loyal dog, while men like him. He sneered at Rocco, got your respect. He straightened his suit jacket, ignoring the man he had just tried to kill. And then she comes, a waitress. And in 6 weeks, you give her everything. You give her the deal. You give her the numbers. You gave her my seat at the table. So you were going to burn me for it? Vincent asked. The camera. You were going to let me authorize the deal on a recorded line and hand the entire structure to my enemies. I was, Leo admitted, a flicker of pride in his eyes. It was perfect. Rocco would take the fall as the traitor. You would be crippled or in prison, and I would take what was left. But I stopped it, I whispered, the horror dawning on me. When I spotted the camera, I ruined his plan. Leo's eyes snapped to me. The coldness there was absolute. You did. You ruined everything, so I had to make a new plan. And you, my dear Tessa, are the star. He pulled a small device from his pocket, a detonator. The camera was my first plan. This one is simpler. What is that? Vincent said, raising the pistol. Insurance, Leo said. The servers in Queens, the ones that hold the entire architecture for the New Deal. The 200 million, they are vulnerable. You wired them. I breathed, my mind racing. You planted explosives. Crude, but effective. Leo smiled. Rocco is a hammer. You see, I learned from him. In 10 minutes, the deal goes live. You, Tessa, will authorize the transfer. But the account numbers, they are not the ones you think they are. The money is not going to your ghost corporation. It is going to mine, an account I have been building for 10 years. And if I refuse, I asked? Then I press this button, Leo said, and your entire beautiful maze, all the data, all the servers, vaporized. The 200 million is trapped in limbo. The deal is dead, and Mr. Caruso's partners will come looking for their money. I do not get it, but you and he nodded at Vincent, are destroyed, which is almost as good. I looked at Vincent. His face was a mask of stone, but his eyes were on me. He was trapped. He could shoot Leo, but Leo would press the button. All his power, all his muscle was useless. Well, this is not just about the money, is it? I said, looking at Leo. It is not even about me. This is about your pride. It is about what I am owed, Leo hissed. No, I said, my voice gaining strength. It is about your pride. You think I took your place. You think I am just a waitress. You, the master planner, the brain. You were outsmarted by a waitress. Leo's smile faltered. Be quiet. You are a genius, Leo, I continued, my mind racing, calculating, finding the loophole. You wired the servers. You found a way to reroute the largest private transfer in New York. But you made one mistake. One tiny, little mistake. What mistake? He sneered. You trusted me, I said. You trusted me to build the maze, and you think you just found the exit. I walked, slowly, to the terminal at the head of the table. Vincent tensed, but did not stop me. You changed the final destination account, I said, my fingers flying over the console. Bringing up my code, you modified the last step. Very clean. So authorize it, Leo commanded, his thumb pressing on the button. Now. The problem is, I said, not looking at him, you only saw the maze. You did not see the architect. I built in a failsafe, a little trick I learned from my library books. It is called a mirrored destination protocol. You are bluffing, Leo said, but a line of sweat had appeared on his temple. Am I? I looked up. You see, when I built the structure, I was worried about a breach, about someone trying exactly this. So, any modification to the final destination address, any change at all, automatically triggers a mirror. The system looks like it is sending the money to your new account, but it is also sending an equal amount, at the exact same nanosecond, to the original account, the right one. I smiled. The 200 million, it will go to your account, Leo, and it will also go to Vincent's. The system will attempt to pay out $400 million from a $200 million pool. The banks will freeze it. The feds will be on it in seconds. The entire transaction will be flagged, locked down, and investigated. You will not get a dime, and neither will he. I nodded at Vincent. It is called mutually assured destruction. You burn him, you burn yourself, and you burn me. Leo stared at me, his face ashen. He was a man of violence, but I had just trapped him with numbers. He could not win. You little bitch, he whispered. So here is the new deal, Leo, I said, my voice as cold as his. You are going to give Vincent that detonator, and I am going to log in, and I am going to fix the account number. I am going to remove your modification. The deal will go through. Exactly as planned, Vincent will get his money, and you will walk out that door, and you will disappear, because if you do not, I looked at the terminal. I will just authorize it right now, and we all go down together. It was a standoff, my mind against his, my poison pill against his bomb. Vincent watched, his eyes blazing, a strange, terrifying pride in his expression. Rocco, bleeding, watched, a look of stunned awe on his face. Leo looked at the detonator. He looked at the gun in Vincent's hand. He looked at me, the waitress who had just destroyed his life's work. With a shaking hand, he placed the detonator on the glass table. Fix it, he hissed, I turned to the terminal. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I logged into the core code. I found his hidden redirect. I deleted it. I recompiled the authorization path. "It is done," and I said, "It is clean." Leo looked at Vincent. "I walk." Vincent nodded, his face unreadable. Leo walked to the elevator. He did not look back. The second the elevator doors closed, Rocco collapsed, his hand clutching his bleeding shoulder. Vincent moved. Not to him, but to the terminal. He looked at the clean authorization screen. He looked at me. "Was it true?" he asked, his voice rough. "The mirrored protocol?" I looked him straight in the eye. "No, I made it all up." A slow, dangerous smile spread across Vincent's face. He picked up the phone. "The authorization is a go. Proceed." He listened, then hung up. "It is done," and he said. We stood in silence, the two of us, while Rocco bled quietly on the floor. I had not just saved the deal. I had won the war. I had faced the man I trusted most, the true traitor, and I had destroyed him with a lie. The waitress had become the queen. The words hung in the silence. I made it all up. Vincent's smile did not fade. It deepened, changing from that dangerous, cold curve into something else, something I had never seen on his face. It was raw, unadulterated respect. It was the look of a predator acknowledging an equal. He had just authorized the transfer of $200 million based on my word, based on a lie. The adrenaline that had turned my spine to steel began to drain, and a violent tremor took over my hands. I had just played poker with a bomb, a gun, and the entire Caruso fortune, and I had won. "Boss?" Rocco groaned from the floor. The sound was wet. He was still bleeding, the dark stain spreading rapidly across the priceless rug. The knife, Leo's knife, was still embedded in his shoulder. Vincent did not look at him. His eyes, those dark, unreadable eyes, stayed locked on me. He walked, not to his man, but to the bar in the corner of the room. The sound of glass clinking against glass was unnervingly loud. He poured 2 measures of amber liquid. He walked back, ignoring the pool of blood, and handed me one of the heavy crystal tumblers. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely grip it. "You were right," he said, his voice a low rumble. I swallowed, the fumes of the whiskey stinging my eyes. "About what?" "When I first saw you," he said. He raised his glass in a small, sharp toast. "I saw the elephant, but tonight I saw the tiger." He drank. I followed, the whiskey searing a path down my throat, burning away the last of the fear and leaving something else. A hot, dark, terrible pride. Vincent finally turned his head. "Rocco." "Boss," the man grunted, his face pale and slick with sweat. Vincent pulled out his phone. He did not call 911. He dialed a single number. "My penthouse. Bring the doctor. Not a hospital. The doctor and a cleanup crew. Rocco is hurt." He listened, then hung up. He looked back at me. "He will live. He's too stubborn to die from a hole in the shoulder." I looked at the blood. I looked at the man who had despised me, the man who had almost died because of a traitor I had trusted. A wave of nausea, cold and acidic, rose in my throat. I had done this. My presence, my rise, had triggered all of this. Leo's betrayal, Rocco's injury. "He hated me," I whispered. "Yes," Vincent said simply. "He saw a waitress. He saw weakness. He was wrong. Now he sees a survivor." He took a step closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. "He sees what I see." He reached out, his hand moving slowly. He did not touch my face. He touched my hair, his fingers brushing a strand back from my cheek. His touch was not gentle. It was possessive. It was a brand. Leo was with me for 25 years. I trusted him with my life. He was my shadow. And you saw him in 6 weeks. "He underestimated me," I said, my voice hoarse. "He only saw what I was." "I only see what you are," Vincent replied, his voice dropping. The air between us was electric, charged with the adrenaline of the night and something else, something far more dangerous. It was the sharp, metallic tang of power, and we had just shared it. I had spent my entire life feeling powerless. Now, standing in front of the most powerful man I had ever met, I felt its dark, seductive pull. This was the moment I realized that my mother's ghost was truly gone. Honesty had not saved her. My lie had just saved us all. I did not flinch from his touch. I leaned into it, just a fraction of an inch. It was a surrender. It was an acceptance. The sound of the private elevator arriving broke the spell. The doctor, a small, grim man carrying a black leather bag, entered with two others who wore identical dark suits and carried a long, rolled-up tarp. They did not look at me. They did not look at Vincent. They went straight to Rocco, their movements efficient, practiced, and terrifying. "Come," Vincent said. He put his hand on the small of my back, a firm, guiding pressure. He did not lead me to the door. He led me to his private quarters, a section of the penthouse I had never seen. He sat me down on a black leather sofa that probably cost more than my entire old apartment building. He did not sit with me. He stood by the window, watching the first gray, watery light of dawn creep over the Manhattan skyline. The $200 million deal was done. The company was his. "You cannot go back," he said, his back still to me. I looked down at my hands, still clutching the empty whiskey glass. "I know. Your old life, your apartment, the waitress, it is gone. It was gone the moment that video of you appeared. Leo knew where you lived, which means the people he was selling me to, they know, too. You are a target now, not as a waitress, as my chief strategist." Chief strategist, the title hung in the air, absurd and heavy. "What does that mean?" He turned. The sun was rising behind him, casting him in shadow, a dark, powerful silhouette. "It means you are no longer an employee, Tessa. It means you are mine to protect and mine to use. You will move in here. Today, your security will be absolute." My stomach clenched. It was not an offer, it was a command. I was a prisoner, a very valuable, very well-protected prisoner. I had escaped the cage of Giovanni's only to find myself in one made of bulletproof glass and steel, 50 stories in the sky. "And what if I say no?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Then you will be dead before you reach the lobby," he said. Not with malice, but with simple, unadorned fact. Leo is gone, but he is not the only threat. You have proven your value. You have also proven your danger. My enemies know you are the one who fixed the deal. They know you are the one who found the traitor. You are as much a part of my organization now as he is." He gestured, presumably, to where Rocco had been bleeding. I was all in. The life I had dreamed of, the one of finance and power. I had it, but it came with blood on the carpet and a man who looked at me like he owned me, because he did. The next few weeks were a blur of sterile, quiet efficiency. I moved into a suite of rooms in the penthouse that was larger than any home I had ever known. I did not leave. I had no reason to. The world came to me. Tailors came, fitting me for clothes that felt like armor, beautiful silks and cashmeres that cost thousands of dollars. Food just appeared. I had a team of analysts now, men in suits who answered to me, who looked at me with a mixture of fear and respect. The acquisition of the tech company was complete. My maze had worked flawlessly. My job now was to integrate its assets, to use its legitimate framework to continue to cleanse the rest of Vincent's operations. I was doing exactly what I had read about in my textbooks. I was just doing it for the mafia. My old life felt like a dream. The smell of the pasta at Giovanni's, the ache in my feet, the memory of my mother. I pushed those memories down. They were useless. They were weaknesses. The past was a ghost, and I was terrified of ghosts. I had to accept what I had become. I was working late one night in the penthouse office, the glass table now my permanent desk, when a shadow fell over me. I looked up. It was Rocco. His arm was in a heavy black sling, and his face was bruised, but he was alive. He stood in front of my desk, looking down at me. The old hatred was gone, replaced by something I could not read. "I need to say something," he grunted. I waited, my hand resting near the silent alarm button Vincent had installed. "That night," he said, struggling with the words, "with Leo, you did not run." "I had nowhere to run," I said. "Bullshit," he growled. "You could have frozen. You could have cried. You did not. You stood there, and you lied to a man holding a bomb. You bluffed a killer." He leaned down, his good hand resting on my desk. "I hated you. I thought you were a weakness, a distraction. I thought you were going to get him killed." He shook his head. "I was wrong. You are not a weakness. You are a weapon. His weapon." He straightened up. "I just wanted you to know. I see it now. We all see it." He turned and walked out. It was not an apology. It was a surrender. It was the old guard bowing to the new. I had not just earned Vincent's trust. I had earned theirs. I was no longer the waitress. I was part of the family, in the only way that mattered. I turned back to my screen, but the numbers were blurry. I had power. I had respect. I had security. I had everything I had ever dreamed of. But I knew, deep in my bones, that I was more trapped than I had ever been. My old life was gone forever. My new one was just beginning, and it was tied irrevocably to the man who was, at that very moment, walking into the office. Vincent came up behind me. He did not speak. He just placed his hands on my shoulders, his grip firm, possessive. I did not flinch. I did not pull away. I closed my eyes, accepted the weight, and leaned back into him. This was my choice. This was my fate. And I would not, could not, ever be that powerless girl from the Bronx again. It was an acknowledgement, a contract, signed in silence. Witnessed by the bleeding city skyline, the penthouse, which had been my prison, became my world. The next 6 months were a blur of transformation. I was no longer the girl who read textbooks in the dark. I was the woman who wrote the new laws for an underworld empire. My maze for the $200 million deal was just the beginning. I took the raw, bloody data of the Caruso enterprise, the numbers Rocco had collected in alleys, and I sanitized them. I moved the assets, piece by piece, as I had described in the restaurant what felt like a lifetime ago. I painted the elephant the color of the room. I used the new tech company as a massive, legitimate filter. I bought real estate. I invested in shipping logistics. I diversified. Vincent gave me absolute control. I became the true chief strategist. I crippled 2 of his rivals, not with bullets, but with leveraged buyouts and hostile takeovers. Just as I had suggested with the Falcones, I used the language of Wall Street as a weapon of war. The Caruso organization, under my guidance, was becoming less of a mob and more of a multinational corporation. The blood was still there, but it was 3 steps removed, hidden behind layers of shell companies and shareholder reports. Rocco became my shadow, not as a jailer, but as a bodyguard. He, who had despised me, now watched me with a fierce, protective loyalty. He had seen what my mind could do. He respected the tiger. But the relationship with Vincent, that was the true complexity. It was not a romance, not in the way the world understood it. There were no flowers, no soft words. It was built on something harder, mutual necessity, absolute trust, and that terrifying electric hum of shared power. We were 2 predators ruling the same territory. Some nights he would just sit in the office with me, watching me work, the silence comfortable. Absolute. He was the only person on earth who saw me, the real me, and I was the only person who saw the man behind the monster. The change happened on a Tuesday. It was raining. I was finalizing the acquisition of a German shipping firm, the last step in making his entire European operation appear legitimate. "It is done," and I said, leaning back from the terminal. "As of this moment, 95% of your income is clean. It is viable. It is taxable. It is legal." Vincent stood at the window, watching the rain lash the glass. 95%, he repeated. "The accountants in Zurich are happy." They are ecstatic, Fee. I said, I waited. The last 5%, that was the part I could not touch. That was the street. The loan sharking, the protection, the blood money. You have built me a fortress, Tessa, he said, turning to me. A fortress of glass and steel. It is clean. It is strong. It is, I agreed, but I cannot live in it anymore. The silence in the room changed. It became heavy, tight. Explain, he said. I have done what you asked me to do, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I took your power and I made it legitimate. I built the ghost. I built the maze. I won the war. But the last 5%, I cannot clean that. It does not want to be clean. It is the root, he said. It is where I came from. I know, I said, and I respect it. But it is not my world. My world is this. I tapped the terminal. The numbers. The strategy. I have made you untouchable on this battlefield. Vincent, but I cannot, I will not be a part of the other one. He walked toward me, his face unreadable. He stopped just in front of my desk. You are asking to leave. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact, laced with a coldness that made my skin prickle. I am telling you what I have decided, I said, meeting his gaze. The waitress was gone. The girl from the Bronx was gone. I was the woman who had bluffed Leo. I will not be your prisoner, Vincent. Not even in a cage this beautiful. You told me I was your strategist. I have given you the ultimate strategy, a legitimate empire. But my part in it is over. I cannot build anything else for you. I expected rage. I expected him to tell me I would be dead before I reached the lobby, just as he had before. Instead, he studied my face for a long, agonizing minute. He saw the resolve. He saw that I was not bluffing. He saw that the tiger he admired could not be caged. You are right, he said. The words so quiet I almost missed them. I cannot use you for that, and I cannot protect you there. He looked around the office, at the life he had built, and the one I had rebuilt for him. If I keep you here, you become Leo. You become bitter. You become a shadow, and I will not destroy what I have found. He made the decision. Rocco will arrange it, a new identity, a new apartment, a new life. You will be scrubbed. You will be a ghost, but a different kind. You will be free. And what about you, I asked. I will still own the last 5%, he said, a hint of that old, cold smile. I am who I am. Tessa, I cannot change the root, but the fortress you built, it will stand. The departure was as quiet and absolute as my arrival. There were no goodbyes. Rocco, his arm now healed, drove me in a nondescript car to a new building, a sleek corporate high-rise in Midtown. He handed me a briefcase. Inside was a new driver's license, a passport, keys, and a ledger. This is your new name, he grunted, your new history, and your severance. I opened the ledger. The bank account number inside had an obscene amount of zeros. My 10% commission laundered cleanly. Thank you. Rocco, I said. He looked at me, his face awkward. Do not get soft, kid. You survived. That is all. He drove away. My new life began. I was Tessa Riley. I had a degree from Stanford. I had an impeccable resume, fabricated by the best, showing a brilliant history at a Swiss investment firm, a firm Vincent now owned. Within a month, I was hired. I was a senior analyst at one of the biggest private equity firms on Wall Street. I had my dream. I wore the suits I had only ever dreamed of. I spoke the language of finance, not as a weapon, but as a tool. I worked 18-hour days, surrounded by ambitious, shark-like men and women who reminded me of Rocco, just in cleaner suits. I rebuilt my life. I went to the gym. I ate at restaurants I used to serve at. I was, for the first time in my life, normal, legitimate, safe. But I never forgot him. Some nights I would stand at the window of my new office, looking downtown toward the penthouse, and I would wonder. Our relationship had not ended. It had just transformed. It was a connection that did not need proximity. He had let me go. That was more profound than any declaration of love. He had respected my decision. About a year passed. I was successful. I was being vetted for a partnership. I was in a meeting, a brutal negotiation for a portfolio buyout. My main rival was a man named Gregory, a smug Ivy League bully who had been trying to sabotage my work for months. Tessa's projections are optimistic, he said, smirking at the board. Perhaps a little naive. She does not understand how this side of the business works. I handled it. I defended my numbers. I won the argument. But Gregory was angry. That evening, he cornered me by the elevators. I do not know how a girl like you got this far, this fast, he hissed, his voice low and venomous. But I will find out, and I will tear you down. I just looked at him, my face calm. Are you threatening me? Gregory. He laughed. It is just business, sweetheart. The next day, Gregory was not at his desk. I got to the office, and his entire workspace was cleared out. Human Resources sent a bland email Gregory had resigned, effective immediately, citing personal reasons. I sat at my desk, the email glowing on my screen. It was impossible. He lived for this job. He would never resign. Then, my assistant placed a small vase on my desk. This just arrived for you. There was no card. I looked at it. It was not roses. It was a single, perfect stem of stargazer lily. It was the same flower that had been in the vase on Vincent's desk in the penthouse, the only decoration he allowed. I froze. I looked at the vase. I looked at Gregory's empty desk. He had not just resigned. He had been, removed. Cleanly. Quietly. I realized the truth. I had left the mafia, but the mafia had not left me. I was free because he allowed it. I was safe because he willed it. He was not just watching me from afar. He was my ghost, my guardian, the tiger in the shadows, ensuring that the fortress I had built for him now extended to me. He was still protecting his chief strategist. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'm so curious to know where in the world you are listening from. Please let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. And do not forget to support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.